Pledge of Allegiance.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will the clerk call the roll?
Councilmember Ford. Councilmember Baxter.
Here.
Councilmember Stiltner.
Here.
Vice Mayor Tremont. Mayor Gordon.
Here. Discussion items, workshop, recognition and demonstration of the GIS product by Ashley Malone and Melanie Schmotzer. Is that how you say your last name?
It's very close.
Okay, all right. Seeing as that we're about to recognize both you ladies, I'd like for both of you to come up to council, come down. We've got some presentations to make to both of you. And Jamie, if you would read both of those for the record for me.
Absolutely. So I'm honored to hear before you guys today. We have two fantastic employees who have put in a lot of work and effort into taking us the next step in the organization. So we wanted to take a moment to thank you publicly for all of your work. So we do want to present you with this plaque to say the City Council of the City of Port Orange, Florida hereby recognizes the innovation and achievement of Ashley Malone and Melanie Schmotzer for development and implementation of the Port Orange Development Activity Interactive Map that we'll be showing you shortly. So.
And of course, we're going to do the family photo. Yes.
Thank you. Your background?
Trying to do this without knocking over their work.
Yeah.
You're in the, perfect. Great.
You're smart enough to Photoshop us all, make us look better.
Yep, that's my job.
In any organization that works well, you need very smart people. You hire a city manager who's smarter than the mayor. The city manager hires department heads that are smarter than him, and the department heads hire people that are smarter than they are. And you guys have proved positive, no doubt about it. That's a very high bar to cross.
Thank you
As
very
we
much.
get our seats, you guys can get ready.
From, can you get the laptop?
I'm showing their wires.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for having us. Is this on? Yes. Thank you so much for having us. We're pretty excited about presenting it also. So as you can see, this was the current development activity report
And for the record, who are you again?
Melanie Schmotzer,
Thank you.
Community Development.
There you go.
So the current development activity report is updated monthly and it's available on our city's website in a PDF form. Now, this activity report has been in use for about 20 years. So we're happy to update it into a, an interactive activity report. So it still has great details, but it's a little out of date, as you can see. So we're gonna have Ashley show you the interactive map.
Hello, I'm Ashley Malone. I'm a GIS technician here for the city,
See, she remembered to introduce herself.
but only because I saw her do it, though. But
Way to go to school.
a couple months ago, Mel and I started working together on an idea to kind of incorporate GIS into the development activity report. And the idea we had was to create a dashboard for staff use and for citizen use. And this is our product. You can see here we have all of the non-residential, public hearing, residential, and roadway projects shown in the legend as well as general project areas. And what's neat is you can click, let's see, I think this is one of the ones we wanted to highlight here. You can click, and then all of the information that you can find here, we have put into these pop-ups. So everything is still available, all of the same information. You can scroll through, look at descriptions, status details, and additionally, we've created links that will take you to all of the associated documents for that project. So you can go in here and look at plans. And now you have all the plans for that project. So if we go back to the dashboard, we can close that out, and we're still zoomed out all the way. Additionally, if you're looking for projects by type, say you want to see residential products only, the list here will filter down by residential, and then also the map will just show you residential projects. Additionally, if you want to see the projects that are under construction, now we filter down to residential under construction. So you can keep filtering down further and further. So, and there are just a couple projects that Mel wanted to highlight in the dashboard.
Right. So one of them that Ashley already highlighted was the Anglers Cove subdivision, which is located on the other side of the Dunlawton Bridge. It's a 5-lot subdivision that what's really great about this is if you live next door, you want to know what the status is of the project, you can see all of the information, including the contact of the planner, so you can directly call the person that you need to get to. You can see the case number, so you can reference the case number. You can see exactly what the project is. So it's a 5-lot subdivision, and the location. You can see the status details, so awaiting reinspection by the developer. And then, like Ashley said, for each one of these projects, you can go into the documents area, and you could see, on this one we have the stormwater report, there's geotechnical, there's the development order plans, and the subdivision plat for the development order. Now, every time a project is resubmitted, that's when these plans will get removed, and the new uploaded submitted ones will be presented.
It'll always be current.
Exactly.
Perfect.
Is there a way for someone to ask a specific question pertaining to
Uh,
project on there?
No,
They
but you
call.
can search for the project. So if you say, I heard of a project called Anglers Cove, you can search it and it'll zoom into the actual project. So it's very intuitive. There's lots of ways to search, and then you could click anyone here. We'll go back to Anglers Cove, and it shows you exactly where it is. It highlights flashing, so you know exactly which one we're talking about. And what's kind of neat too, we went even a step further. You can zoom in and you can actually see the general boundary of the property. So
It's helped to have a screen that size.
yeah, it does. That's true. But
This is all connected to our website?
yeah, it is. Not yet. It's going to be. We're planning on going live November 1st. But yes, it will be on a link.
Will
So
it matter whether a person is on a phone or a tablet or a laptop, or is it compatible to all of that?
you want to go ahead and take that one?
I didn't mean to jump ahead.
That's okay. We did think about the fact that most of the time people are on their cell phone or on a tablet. So if you can see here, this is actually a QR code that we have created. And this, if you hover over that, if you're familiar with QR codes, will lead to, it's not a dashboard. The dashboard is meant for desktop use. But if you were to, it's okay. This thing doesn't like you. If you were to pull this up on your phone, it is mobile friendly. And you can get a lot of the same information. There's a legend. You just have to click around a little bit more. There's not as much instantly available information. Here we have a summary by activity. So you can kind of dive down and find what you want on your cell phone. And all of the same pop-ups still come up and things like that. Whoa, can you close that for me?
Well, on the pop-ups, it shows Penelope as the person. It shows a phone number. Will it also have an email link so they don't have to call her? Could they just email her right from there?
I think
Go
it
ahead.
did. I think it showed her email, didn't it?
Yeah. So
Maybe not.
Yeah, just hit the little overhead button.
Okay, well, if I could get the right one, it should have both her number and email,
Okay,
plus full name and,
okay.
Yep.
there we go.
Perfect.
Great.
So, and additionally, we can query kind of the same way as the dashboard, and this will show up on your phone in a consumable format. It won't be all jumbled together. So,
So because I'm, just for my clarity, this is fantastic, by the way. I mean, it's really unbelievable. The amount of questions that people have about development and new project, et cetera, now I can tell them, listen, you can go on our website and look at all current and future approved projects and check the status, check the update, get all the pertinent information that you need. Is that what I'm looking at here?
No, these are current applications. So it goes from application submittal to completion. So if it gets a CO issued, or if it, if it's done, it's going to go to an archive. We'll explore a way to be able to view that archive so you can see the past ones, but at this time we haven't modified it yet for the future.
So once it gets a CO, it comes off that.
It'll go
Makes sense.
about a
Yeah.
month. We keep it on the current activity report about a month, just to kind of let everybody know that it is, done.
But like to what?
While
Constructed.
something-
Yeah.
While something's being developed and built, that's gonna be on there.
Absolutely.
That's
From
normally when we get our.
idea.
Yeah.
right from the time the application gets submitted, it's going to be a pin.
That's
Mhm.
phenomenal.
Does the, is there a way, or maybe it was on there and I just missed it, but, so if I see a project on there and I see that it's, something that's going through review, and I click on there and I'm like, okay, but when's the next city council meeting or workshop about this topic, or when does it go to the planning board? Does it show those meeting dates on there?
It does.
Awesome.
So
You guys are amazing.
what we have is we'll have planning commission if it applies, and
Okay.
city council if it applies.
Fabulous.
Some of the site plans are just staff review, but so you can see the past ones.
Wow.
And it'll be blank if like say it goes to second reading and we don't have it scheduled for
Gotcha.
an agenda. But then there's a status down here that if we do know it's tentative, it's possible that we could put it there as it's
Okay.
tentative to go to this council date, and so we're exploring a bunch of different ideas for it that we'll finalize by November 1st.
And we were hoping for feedback.
It updates,
Presenting to you feedback to implement before the 1st as well.
and it updates real time?
Yep.
Or pretty much real time?
Mail time.
All right.
Mail time.
So in the past it was monthly. We're going to take it down to weekly,
Okay.
but we're going to say by end of the day Friday we'll have an update, and maybe on the side we can have updated on this date so that what is here is current.
Gotcha.
We're also exploring ideas on how to possibly have a filter that would say what was updated. So
Like
you can,
that too.
yeah, instead of a
So I don't have
product
to go
staying.
back and look at everything to see if anything's new again, because
Right.
quite frankly, there's a lot there.
Yes.
That's difficult.
Right.
And on paper, it was easy to see what's changed and what's not when you scan through the list. So
It was
that would
circled.
be very helpful. The other thing I have to ask is, I being a creature of habit for having gone through these every month for umpteen million years now, this report is one of the ones that I look forward to as much as any, because these are about the things that our citizens ask about all the time. So I'm used to, as soon as it comes into my email box, oh, cool. It's like that piece of candy, you open it up. Can we get email reminders, like on a weekly basis? That council did, just to let you know that the GIS has been updated for your review, because I need something to key me to go look at it for a little while until I get used to it at least, because otherwise I'm going to go, oh my goodness, it's been 3 or 4 weeks, I haven't had my monthly report. Oh, wait a second, I need a little help.
Absolutely, that won't be a problem.
Okay.
And it'll probably come from me.
Okay.
So, okay, well, we showed you a residential project, so we'll show you a commercial project. And if you hit, oh, gosh, it really doesn't like me.
No.
Not getting a complex there all of a sudden, are you?
I work on my cell phone.
It really impressed me
looking
with
for
the
non-residential?
real-time feed of the construction.
Yeah, and as soon as I receive any kind of update, I'll confirm it, and then it would be, as soon as I hear it. So it's possible that it won't be Friday that it would be updated. It's, ahead of time, but definitely on a Friday. If you hit this home button, it zooms out, makes it easier to locate the next project. So a commercial project that we currently have going on is Takara Restaurant at the Pavilion at Port Orange. Just like Ashley said, you can either zoom in or you can select right down there, and she already filtered it to make all commercial projects. So as you can see, Takara is a commercial project, but it has the same exact information that a residential project would have. So it shows you who to contact for any kind of construction information. If you have any questions after reading the report, name, number, email, what the project is, and then of course documents. So just like the other project, you've got the documents, you've got the development order plan. We also have an application that sometimes people want to know who's the owner, who's the engineer, so you can view the actual application that's submitted to the city.
Okay.
So Parker Mitchenberg is the engineer for this one. Oh gosh.
We've heard of him.
Okay, so also in the city, for public notices, we put up yellow zoning signs, and I'm sure you've seen them around town.
Mm-hmm.
There's currently one, thank you. There's currently one at the Gateway Center right at Lowe's. So if you know that there's a yellow zoning sign, you want to know what's going on with it, you can either call the number, which is direct to me, or you can go to the development activity report and click the link for all of the information. Okay, there we go. So you see it's the 9th Amendment to the amended and restated Port Orange Gateway Center PCD, and
What we worked on
contact.
last week.
Yeah, and then this answers your question about the upcoming dates. So the first reading was September 17th. The next one is tentatively scheduled for November 5th. So you can see the status detailed schedule for council.
Mm-hmm.
So one more that we can do is a roadway project. So just like in the current development activity report, we feature roadway projects that the city is working on. So North Spruce Creek Road sidewalk, you can view the boundary or the general location of the boundary of the project, so you know that it's going from Nova Road to Angelina Court. And then you click on it, just like the other ones, and you'll see that, oh gosh. Okay, thank you. I needed that. It has similar information, but not the same as the construction for residential and commercial, in that it's a little less detailed because an application is not submitted to the city. It's a project that we're working on. So, but just like the other ones, you have a staff contact with the information. So if you want any extra information on that project, you can call. And of course, we're gonna, if we get plans and anything to submit in the document area, we can add it there as well. Any questions?
I'm blown away impressed.
Yeah, that's awesome.
My condolences to the presentations that follow.
Yeah, I was just thinking.
Yeah, I'm really
You guys are in
pleased that you're
trouble,
gonna put.
Chief.
Show and
best
tell
part-
has definitely gone to a new level.
Hey, Scott, I like the part that they said they're gonna put this screen in the mayor's office so that we
Yeah.
have that tool for us to use anytime we want.
Great.
Outstanding job. This is
So you're gonna make
Thank
sure
you.
that happens now, right?
Sure.
this is great. I don't know
I
that.
take it nobody else is doing this.
I have not seen any. The closest we've seen is a website that would have listed documents. So it would have the project with the listed documents, but nothing interactive to where you could say, I live there, I want to know what's going on right there.
Okay.
I know you guys are looking for feedback from us. Other than I'm impressed, that's what you're going to get tonight, because I think probably with this, as the mayor was talking about, once we get used to using it a little bit, and then we can now wrap our minds around what this can do, there may be time down the road where we come up with other ideas and, hey, what ifs and can this be done and stuff like that. So just be patient with us and don't get frustrated if, you launch this thing live and a month later we're like, hey, can we do this, I don't know that that'll happen, but,
We don't want your ear getting burned from the phone ringing off the hook
yeah,
or
yeah,
anything,
for
but-
sure. This is really impressive, and the only thing I can think off the top of my mind for our residents is, and you guys may have already done it or not, but maybe some type of a 3 to 5 minute video tutorial. You guys have already done it, right? Yeah,
It's in the
so
works.
That's what I'm saying. Is so the first time when Robert Reinhagen logs on, he's ready to jump on. That I can see. But when a resident wants to, what is this? Let me check it out.
Exactly.
It's kind of hard to start. But if you can watch a video a couple of times and that's there, then they can be like, okay, let me go back and play with that and check it out, and that's going to be great.
Brevity
So
on the videos is
YouTube
important.
vid.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah. It's not too
Awesome.
long, but just kind of at the high points. And
Right.
because like a lot of programs, once people get a little bit of comfort, then they're going to start clicking on other things. They're going to figure a lot of it out as they go. So,
When people
I think you
have
got your
easy
volunteer for the
access-
demonstration video right there.
Matt Jones.
When you have something like this that makes information readily available, this adds to openness, this adds to access to citizens. This is them being able to use their government to find out what's going on. And this is a tool that I think is worth us touting, that once we go live, we should let people know about it in the form of a press release. Okay.
She's
I wanted-
working on that
Christine's
right
hand
now.
went up.
She-
That's what I was
She'll
looking
have
to
it
say.
out before you stop talking.
You probably will too.
There.
But I think that this is that it's not just that it's good news, but it's a very, very useful tool.
Awesome.
And I can't wait to see it live. I can't wait to see it live on a screen that big, but I'll have to wait a little while longer for that. I doubt that's in the budget, but
Front page of the website or community development's page for this link?
Wherever you all would like to have it on the website. I mean, I don't think that's our,
Okay.
yeah.
We have, 6 buttons on the front, and I think that it maybe even a 7th in the short term. Or maybe,
Maybe somebody from IT can speak to that.
There's our guy right there.
Come on, tell us what you're thinking. After you take that shirt, turn it inside out. I'm just kidding.
James Hicks, IT manager. We'll probably link it under the GIS page as well as the community development
Cool.
page.
Perfect.
We're limited to only 6 buttons on the front page,
Okay.
so we're not able to add a 7th button to that. But while I'm up here, I just want to point out that there are commercial software out here that can do similar things to this, and all of this was done in-house using existing software, which is their
Awesome.
sweat equity. So.
Awesome. Yeah. Real impressive.
Yeah, a couple more things. This QR code is basically a JPEG, so it can go on any promotional material. So any of our building documents that we have upstairs, like what requires a building permit, we can put that on anything, and they could put their cell phone up. So, I mean, I think that it could spread really easy. Social media, it could just be put on the internet, and they just put their cell phone up, and it's right in their cell phone.
so when Scott's getting all those Facebook questions about what's being built in his backyard, all he's got to do is just put the QR code right there, and that'll be his response.
Can the
Yep.
QR code, can a QR code decal be added to the yellow signs?
Ooh.
Because I can
I've-
envision where somebody would see a sign on a piece of property, and they
That's
can
a
go
great
up,
idea.
scan it, and then when they get home, they can check it out right there.
That's a great idea.
Something like that. Somebody note that down that I had a good idea.
Yes.
And it's
Just don't ask me
Yeah.
to incorporate it into
Yeah.
what
There's
there's
a-
a,
there's
there's a
idea,
video
everybody.
record NOB minutes, so
Hey,
you're
Scott.
getting credit.
That's one.
That's one.
There was one more feature that we wanted to show. You mentioned residents want to see what's happening near their home. We have an address search bar here that you can type in, and you can search
Type in Scott's
near your
address.
home.
Yeah.
We'll do Wawa. I think it'll come up. So, if you lived at the Wawa, you could go in and see what's happening around the Wawa. But
That's pretty good.
so, and it will highlight.
So you can type in a neighborhood basically, and it'll give you whatever's close to that area.
Yes.
Wild West.
And then we've also included property appraiser information. So if you zoom down to the parcel level and then click here, it goes directly to
No way.
that parcel on the property appraiser's website.
Wow.
think that's all the toys we have to show. I think we're out.
Outstanding.
I think there'll probably be a few realtors that'll find that tool very handy as well.
Great.
So this will be November 1st.
Ish.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's it,
Ironically,
for
the
sure.
day after Halloween.
Will it be on the front page, the first page of the website? We have to dig to find it.
We can put it on the news, you know.
In the city
we
news.
can put it, you
And
know,
then
push
you
it out for the city news.
go to
but it'll be
community
found
development.
permanently
Let's-
on
yeah.
community development and GIS.
Just want it easy for people to access. That's quality. All right, Scott, what do you got?
Alrighty, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
guys.
ladies.
Outstanding.
Awesome.
Well done.
Awesome.
All done
I
in-house.
think they both deserve a comment. Oh, that's right, we did do commendations for them.
All done in-house. Unbelievable.
That's great, great, great work. I know that is a lot of people and a lot of effort. And I'm very, very proud to see that spearheaded.
What you got for us, Scott? What you got for us? Unbelievable. That was awesome.
And I think that brings us to item 5. Item 5, PFM discussion of proposed changes to investment policy. Now, after you introduce yourself, I want to see how you follow that.
I think it's time for me to leave, Mayor. Mayor and Council, Scott Niels, Chief Financial Officer. This evening, we're pleased to have with us Jason Human from PFM, who is our investment advisor. And in the information provided to you prior to the meeting, he had a cover letter for the things that he would like to address this evening. The first is investment policy review. There's a couple changes that we're proposing that he will go over. The second item is looking at the investment portfolio review, and the third item is our safekeeping and custody relationship. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Jason for him, and we can answer any questions at the completion of his presentation. Here's your PowerPoint. Yeah. And that's great. Thank you.
Okay. Good evening, Jason Human, PFM Asset Management. Pleased to be the investment advisor for the city. As Scott mentioned, we have a couple things to discuss this evening as part of our regular interactions with Scott and his team. We have a couple, 3 things I wanted to mention tonight. Number one is how do we protect the portfolio in a declining interest rate environment? You may have seen on the news that the Fed funds rate, the Federal Open Market Committee has decreased the Fed funds rate 2 times this year and projecting maybe a third increase within the next week or so at their next meeting. So that's one of the challenges for a high quality fixed income investor like the city is with interest rates falling, how do we keep up that level of income that we've seen over the past few years? Second item to discuss is diversification among our corporate securities. And then third, as Scott mentioned, there's some operational inefficiencies with your current safekeeping arrangement with SunTrust Bank. So we've looked at how we can optimize that and make it a better process for the city. Okay. So the first thing I'll talk about is the investment policy review. We do this on an annual basis. We interact with Scott and his team, and we compare the policy against 3 different frameworks. The first one being state statutes. 218.415 governs the investment of public funds, so we look at your policy against that. We also compare your policy against the Association of Public Treasurers of U.S. and Canada, as well as GFOA best practices, the Government Finance Officers Association, so that's industry best practices. So when we look at Florida statutes, 218.415, your current policy contains all of the required sections for there, and we do not recommend any changes based on Florida state statutes. When we compare to the Association of Public Treasurers of U.S. and Canada, again, contains all required information necessary to be certified by the APT US&C, so no changes recommended there. Thirdly, the GFOA industry best practices, once again, contains all the best practices as recommended by GFOA, so no changes there as far as complying with any 3 of those organizations. We do have a recommendation to increase efficiency and look to increase earnings in the portfolio, and that's number 2 there. So broaden the allowable corporate note investments by allowing single A or better by one nationally recognized statistical rating organization. Your current policy allows for AA and better, so that means AA and AAA only corporate names. We're looking to increase the pool of available securities to purchase by going down to the single A. Have a couple of reasons why on the next few slides here.
Didn't we do that already? I thought we already did that, or did we go from triple to double, or I thought we made some kind of an adjustment like that last year?
We discussed it last year. I don't believe we ever implemented it.
Okay.
Yeah, so
All right.
we brought this to staff, and apologize, I've only been here a little over a year, so I don't remember.
Yeah, that's okay.
But I believe we discussed it but never brought it to council.
Okay.
One of the main reasons is just simply availability of names. So when we look at this corporate universe, we're using the 1 to 5 index, 1 to 5 year U.S. index as an example. You all are invested in a 1 to 3 year portfolio, but just for analysis, this is pretty much identical to the 1 to 3 year portfolio. If you look at AA or better, there's only a little over 13.5% of the corporate names that are investable in the universe. When you drop down to A and even BBB, you can see the percentages of names that are available there. So part of that is, over the years, back in 2011, the S&P actually downgraded U.S. government debt. Previously AAA, downgraded it to AA. And over the years, some of the ratings requirements have slowly pushed names that were once AAA and AA into that single A category. An example here is on this slide. Focus on the right-hand side. So this is by face value. If you look on the right-hand chart in 2006, you can see that 33% of the investable corporate assets were AAA or AA. Fast forward now to 2017, 2018, that's down to 13%. So really limiting the availability of names that we can even research when we go to our credit committee and look to add these names into a portfolio. So a side note as to how we actually look to purchase names in a portfolio, we don't rely on ratings only. We have a credit committee that's represented by some of the brightest members of our firm, meet on a monthly basis, and it's a group decision on whether a name can be added or removed from a portfolio. So even though you have a portfolio manager managing your funds on a daily basis, he can't solely decide any particular name that he wants to put in. It has to be agreed upon by the entire committee. Some of the names you may recognize on this list that are A-rated, some big names here and just how much of the corporate index they represent. JP Morgan Chase, almost 2%. You go on down the list, you see some real big names there that are only single A rated that we aren't able to invest in your portfolio because of their rating alone. Provided some analysis on what the different indexes look like as far as total return over the years. So you can see the AAA index represented by the taupe bar, AA by the blue bar, and single A by the yellow bar. And as you would imagine, as you go down into the single A rating, you're going to see some increased returns over the year compared to only a AA or only a AAA type portfolio. Also, for just comparative purposes only, I've plotted the 3 different indexes using a $50 million market value. That's just an indicative number, nothing in relation to the city, but just to show actual dollar differences. So again, taupe representing the AAA, blue AA, and yellow single A. And you can see on a $50 million portfolio, if we back test that back 10 years, you can see the earnings differential by going into that single A category. This chart's a little busy, but I'm gonna explain it and kind of walk through it. So what this is called is letter rating migration rates. And what it shows, the top chart is in 2018, where corporate securities went as far as ratings goes throughout the year. So if we focus, let's look at the A column. So A on the top, A on the left at 89.4%. So in 2018, you had some movement of the A names. If you look to the left, 3.3% of them were upgraded. If you look to the right, 3.7 of them were downgraded. So A to BBB. Now this is a Moody's chart, so BAA is actually BBB if you talk about S&P. And then if you go all the way to the right in the red, you see 0% of those single A's defaulted. Now we've put another chart along the bottom, which is basically the same information, but 1-year averages from 1970 to 2018. So if we look at the same single A rating, 86.9% on a 1-year basis between 1970 to 2018 stayed at single A. There were a few upgraded, there were a few downgraded, and there were a small percentage of defaults, 0.1% in any 1-year period going back to 1970. So that concludes the investment policy and ratings portion of the discussion. Happy to entertain any questions before we move on.
Gentlemen? I don't have anything.
Okay.
Moving on.
So the second item we've been working on with staff is a review of the portfolio and where the assets are invested. So as I mentioned when I first began speaking, the market's expecting additional rate cuts coming up probably next week. There's about a 92% chance that when the Fed meets at the end of October, they will reduce the Fed funds rate by 0.25%, and then your fixed income investments will be directly affected by that. All right, so how do we protect against lower rates? We look to invest the most we can in a core diversified portfolio in the 1 to 3 year range instead of the money market funds. So when you leave your money in a money market fund, those rates are directly affected by the Fed funds rate. You'll start to see that money market yield decline in your investment in your bank account as the Fed funds rate reduces. So we're expecting one more rate cut this year, potentially more out into 2020, all depending on the economy. So what we do to look at this and find out where the city's money should be optimally invested is we do what's called a cash flow analysis. So we look at your account information going back 5 years, and then we put that into our model, and it shows us based on your income and expenses. You know, as you receive your tax dollars and you have expenses, those are represented by the yellow line there. And then the blue bars or blue area is what we would recommend as investable assets. So we put a 20% cushion on the short-term cash flows, which is the yellow area, and we recommend the rest be invested into a longer-term strategy. So when we did that analysis, we showed your longer-term strategy was underfunded by about $6 million. So you want to keep money in the bank, obviously, because you have expenses coming in, right? You want to keep enough liquid to cover the day-to-day expenses and invest the rest. So on the left-hand side of this chart, you'll see your current allocation, bank account about $30.5 million. Local government investment pools, that's an overnight short-term investment of $10 million, and then the core portfolio, $47 million. So our analysis shows that bank account balance should decrease by $6 million, and that $6 million should go into the core portfolio. I've shown some yields there as of 9/30, and so your bank account's currently earning 0.75%, whereas the yield at market of your core portfolio, 1.86%. So if you take that $6 million difference and just do some back of the napkin math, nothing official, the 1.1% difference would be about $66,000 in increased earnings over a 1 year time period. Now all that's subject to change based on market conditions. Just provided a couple notes on what exactly immediate liquidity is versus core portfolio. I think most of us have an understanding of immediate liquidity as to fund your day-to-day operations, and core is what your long-term reserves should be. Also included here what the fixed income index returns did as of September 30th. If you look at the U.S. Treasury, you can see that over time, that's most likely going to underperform the credit enhancement sectors such as corporates and asset backs. Okay. So any questions on the second portion, the investment portfolio recommendations?
Surprisingly not. You're doing
Okay.
a great job.
Well, thank you. And finally, we looked at your current safekeeping relationship with SunTrust, and we did a little bit of analysis there. What we found after speaking with SunTrust is you all have a safekeeping relationship, which is a little bit different than a custody relationship. Custody relationship is recommended by GFOA best practices. Currently in your safekeeping relationship, there's a lot of manual input involved with city staff, whereas they're getting trade tickets directly from us, looking at the tickets, and then entering those details directly into SunTrust's safekeeping website, so then SunTrust can then go out and settle the trade. Custody relationship works a little bit differently. Custody relationship, they receive the information directly from our trading desk. They work with the counterparty, which would be a broker or a broker-dealer, to settle the trade and basically take the manual burdensome out of city staff on settling these trades. We'll say a safekeeping relationship is quite uncommon in our industry. We have a number of accounts around Florida, and I can't think of one that has a safekeeping relationship. Best practice is to use a custody relationship. We work with numerous custodians, so it really is not. It's really up to city staff to decide, which custodian would be best. We don't have a particular recommendation. We would just recommend to move to a custodial relationship. Just some graphs on how the relationship works. So you see PFM would be the investment advisor at the top. We're the ones making the trades, but we're not the ones actually handling the cash or settling the trades, right? Best practices would be to, make us, we're the fiduciary, we're doing the investments, but we shouldn't have any hands in the cash, right? Best practice is to let the other parties, unrelated parties, handle that, right? So that information goes to the custodian. They settle the trades, and then for a third check, your auditor looks at your accounts on an annual basis and makes sure everything is appropriate there as well. Finally, if you look at a little more detail on how the actual process works, this is a little burdensome, but it does show kind of the relationship between the three parties. PFM is the person instructing the trades. We send the information to the bank, who settles the trade with the third party, and then the city staff receives confirmations and statements from the custodian bank, confirmations from PFM, statements from the custodian bank. I added a few slides in the appendix, basically related to the credit review process. Happy to discuss any of those if you saw any that stood out while you were reviewing, but we're just going to leave those there for just in the book there.
So on your last slide before you get there, what kind of costs are involved in switching gears and going more to a custody type process versus
Sure.
safekeeping?
So right now, I believe you're paying about $3,500 annually for your safekeeping arrangement. That's with SunTrust. We did go out and ask SunTrust for a bid on what it would cost for a custodial relationship. They came in extremely high at 5 basis points, much higher than we see as an industry standard. Some banks just don't feel like custody is where they like to make their money. They don't go hard after entities for custodial relationships. More common fee we would see maybe a half basis point. I haven't.
What does that correspond to dollars on our portfolio?
Sure, so-
Roughly.
Yeah, so you guys, well, we're recommending a $53 million portfolio. Let me do some quick math here.
I'm not going to hold you to it, just rough.
1% is 530,000. 1 basis point is 53,000. Half a basis point would be about 25,000.
Okay.
And then typically they have scaling agreements, so the more money you have at the custody bank, the lower the fee goes. But it's been about a year since I've gone out to custody for bids, so I don't have the most current information.
Okay. But we are talking about a substantial increase in cost by changing to that process.
Sure, I would say let's look at bids first before we see how much, because again, it all depends on who's looking to win business and try to increase their custody relationship. But it would most likely be in additional cost.
And if this is a GFOA best practice, why I don't recall this ever coming up in one of our audits with our auditors before on this. Is this something do you recall, Mayor?
Not that I can recall. This, you're not going to see something like this in a typical CAFR because they're not necessarily recommending
Yeah.
best practices. Or usually a CAFR is going to evaluate the soundness of the practices you're already employing. So you won't get a investment strategy change out of a CAFR. So that's why they're here right now. That's why Scott's brought them to us right now, so that we can take a look at. These are pure policy choices.
Yeah, and that's probably something for further discussion with Scott and Jake in terms of whether or not we want to make that decision and what's the give and take. How much staff time do we free up versus the cost? And like he's talking about, until we bid this and see, we don't even know if we're talking $20,000, $50,000, $100,000
And honestly,
versus $3,500.
you got to look at this type of investment as different from what we do in our pension funds. This has to be extremely conservative compared to that type of investment strategy. Yes, I can live with lower returns because I cannot live with losses in any given year.
Right.
So it's just a different risk tolerance.
The reason this came up, Council, was that when I asked Jason to work with Brian Orff, our SunTrust, one identified that they were saying there's some confusion there about who was doing what. And so Jason took it on himself there to look to see what that situation was. And it came back with this, so I'm not sure why it was set up that way in the first place, but we will certainly bring back to you a recommendation and the cost related to that.
Sometimes it's not right or wrong, sometimes it's just good and better.
Right.
Correct.
And
Yeah, that's something we would have brought to your attention much earlier. We were under the impression from the last regime that it was actually a custodial relationship. When we dug down deeper and had the conversation with SunTrust, which Scott was nice enough to authorize us to speak to SunTrust on your behalf, we did dive down and find out it is actually a safekeeping relationship.
And Jason, you said you searched and like you couldn't find anybody else that is even doing the safekeeping. They're extremely high percentage custodial relationships.
Correct. I can't think of any off the top of my head. Just in Florida alone, I look after some 50-odd different government entities around the state, and I can't think of one that has a safekeeping relationship.
Okay.
To do something like that, though, are we giving up some of our own oversight to do that? It seems like, you know, it just seems like that process, you're adding another layer, and we're kicking the can oversight over to somebody else that we're going to pay a lot of money to. I'm not arguing whether or not it's the right thing to do. I just, in my mind, I'm trying to process why have we been doing that. I know, like when Tracy was running finance, she liked the X's and O's and the hands-on and the, you know, maybe a little too much sometimes and a little too tightly, but you know, the oversight and the control on that seemed valuable. And I guess I want to make sure, maybe Scott, you don't have to speak to that tonight, but I want to make sure that if that's a decision we're going to look at seriously from a policy change from council, that you are completely comfortable with it, Jake is completely comfortable with it, and we fully understand what are we gaining and losing. You know, so.
I can
And
say.
I think you just hit the nail on the head too, because I think you're not going to be able to get much guidance from us tonight because we've got to be able to absorb it. And then, of course, you and Jake have to absorb it as well. And then we got to have the meeting of the minds from there.
Well, I will say that what Jason said was correct, that we're doing the record-keeping component of it. We're not really looking to see whether that was the appropriate trade. And so we're not really gaining anything by having ourselves make those transaction entries ourselves. Rather, they're the ones that identify the transaction. If it went to a custodial relationship, then they would make all that bookkeeping and keep the records there, rather than us. So we would just be able to have that electronically rather than manually having to enter all that. So that is a major benefit for us. The cost may not be worth it, but we'll certainly bring that back to
Well, and if you and Jake decide to bring this back to us for a recommendation, what I would appreciate is in the presentation at that point is really vet out the pros and the cons and lay that out so that we can see that. Because that's a lot to wrap our minds around. But
Sure.
I definitely appreciate the recommendation.
Absolutely, and
immediately.
I'll if indeed
For
it does
sure.
come back, I will have some bids for you. It's as simple as an email. We reach out to
Yeah.
3 or 4 custodian banks, say what's your current rates on custodial services, here's the asset size, and they'll get back to us usually within a day or two. It's a real simple process. One other thing I was going to mention, the safekeeping as far as oversight, is with the safekeeping relationship, SunTrust is doing whatever you tell them to do by basically inputting the trade details. So when Scott's staff gets a ticket from us, they're taking the price and typing it into SunTrust, taking the shares, typing it into SunTrust. The custodial relationship, SunTrust is responsible for verifying those details from us. So they're checking our trade ticket and they're checking the broker-dealer's ticket to make sure everything matches up. So they're actually increasing their oversight on
Got
the
it.
custodial side versus you
Got
just
it.
typing it into a system and they do whatever you tell them to.
Okay.
Jason, are there any, going back to the allowing the single A, is there any downside to that? I mean, is there a you know, anything that would raise concern by you know, us allowing the expanded group?
Sure. Obviously, you're decreasing the rating, right? So you're, in theory, this is a slightly riskier asset comparable to a AA or a AAA.
Yeah.
Right? I will say that PFM stands for Public Financial Management. We manage public funds exclusively, you know, on the fixed income side. So we are only buying securities that are appropriate for government entities in these portfolios. You know, I will flip ahead to one of the appendix slides just to show you what kind of that credit committee looks like. You'll see some names on here, some designations after there. Many of the folks on the credit committee are chartered financial analysts. That's pretty much the top designation you can get in our industry. Right. They've been around this game a long time. They understand what the fundamentals are behind the corporate securities. And I'll just go back to saying that it's not one individual person that makes these decisions. They're included on a committee basis. I will say it's very common to have single A or higher as a ratings requirement. There are
Okay.
certainly entities that do allow double A or better, and there's entities that allow triple B or better. But single A or better is typically the most standard that I've seen.
Okay.
For a proposal this evening, Mayor and Council, in the investment policy that I included on page 8, there's a chart that shows the different ratings. Our recommendation is that the second line there under the corporates be changed to include that all of the A category ones. And if the council so directs, we bring that back to you for next council meeting for approval of the policy change. Or we can discuss it additionally if you'd like to make that, if you want to make that change. One of the other changes we have is on section, it was IX or IV or XVIII, which talked about the investment committee, and the investment committee has been disbanded. That's the one that used to have a member of council on it. What we have right now under reporting is the city manager, finance director, the accounting manager, and the cash accountant meet periodically to discuss the portfolio, and that's part of this recommendation that we made tonight as we met with Jason July or June, I can't recall which, and asked him to come up with this presentation for council. So that section has been deleted. There's still the review requirements that are in there. And the final thing is on the last part, investment policy adoption. It does reference also the investment committee, and our proposal is that we have the city manager, designee, finance director, accounting manager shall review the policy annually and bring it back to city council. So we can provide you with a finalized red line version of that for your consideration.
That'd be
Good. Any issues with that?
I just-
No,
No,
I think it's a
on
good
the-
idea.
Sounds like a course of action.
On the A-rated recommendation, is there a cap on that? I was looking to see. In other words, is there a
Percent of portfolio?
Yeah.
Can I borrow that for just a second, the policy? We do not put a cap on individual ratings, but we do have a cap on the sector.
Okay.
Corporates cannot be more than 50% of your total portfolio, and any one single name cannot be more than 5% of your portfolio per policy. PFM has an internal policy. We don't like to see over 3% of any one given name, so we would typically see much lower than 3% in the portfolio.
Okay.
So Mayor, we're looking for some direction on if you'd like us to present the changes in the investment policy to include the all of the A ratings, and then we'll bring back to you for additional discussion on the safekeeping component.
I'd like to do that. I don't know
Yeah.
about the rest, y'all. Are we all in agreement?
Yes.
I think we're all in agreement.
Okay,
Very good.
thank you. Thank you,
Okay,
Jason.
thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks for your thoroughness.
Stupid card. Thanks, sir.
County Fire Services overview on consolidation. Item 6.
Good evening, Ken Fuston, Port Orange Fire Chief. Again, this is just going to be a briefing on what the Volusia County Fire Chiefs Association presented to the roundtable of elected officials back in.
You're gonna make this more exciting than it was when they did that,
I'm
right?
going to do my best, but I doubt if I can top the first presentation tonight. But
Well,
I'll
we
do what
need
I
some
can.
interactive stuff here, Chief.
I'm going to struggle topping the second because I don't have the bow tie. So anyway, the whole presentation that the Volusia County Fire Chiefs made focused back on the 2010 Tri-Data study. I provided that copy to you. I believe it was on the Civic Clerk website. If you did get the time to look at it, it's good information in there. There's a lot of it that's now outdated. A lot of it went undone, but it is out there. I provided it to you. It was commissioned by the Civic League of the Halifax area. And it was prepared by Tri-Data, which is a planning corporation out of Arlington, Virginia. It took 6 months to complete. There was 42 participants, including various finance directors, fire chiefs, community leaders, and Tri-Data staff. At the end of the study, there was 23 recommendations. There is one thing on this slide I want to point out that the Volusia County Fire Chiefs tried to highlight and discovered. In 2010, the total cost countywide fire services was determined to be $85 million. The Tri-Data study predicted a 2018 projected cost of $164 million. What actually came out to be in 2018 was less than 90 million. So we've identified a $74 million mistake in their, not a mistake, but an error in their forecast.
In the prediction.
In their predictions, that's correct.
Okay.
Good error.
Yeah. 2024, obviously, they projected it to be $318 million. We won't know what that's going to be until 2024. But we've already recognized a $74 million error in our projections from 2010. Fire chiefs from all municipalities, as well as Volusia County, participated. We're all continued stakeholders. That includes EMS, Volusia County EMS, EMA, the Sheriff's Office 911 Center, Daytona State College, the Daytona International Speedway Fire Department, Florida Division of Forestry, and Volusia County Emergency Management. They talked about various types of consolidations. You have administrative consolidation. They're all defined there. I'm not going to read them all to you. You have functional, operational, a full consolidation, contract consolidation, and then a very simple merger. Back to the 2010 study again, 23 recommendations came out of the Tri-Data study. Out of the 23, only 10 of the top 18 recommendations actually affected Port Orange Fire Rescue. Recommendations 18 through 23 all related to the consolidation of the County 911 Center and or a conceptual consolidation or a creation of various fire protection districts throughout the county, which none of the fire protection districts were ever, that never occurred. Recommendation 1 affected the cities with the Florida Statute Chapter 175 pension plan. That recommendation was to lower the unfunded liability. The action that was taken, by this I'll refer to what happened here. In 2012, Council imposed a new 2-tiered pension plan for our firefighters, which reduced future retirement benefits and increased member contributions. As a result, our pension plan has steadily seen improvements in the unfunded liability. So the percentage is not, I won't say rapidly going up, but it is showing improvements since 2010. Recommendation number 2, the Tri-Data study recommended on automatic fire alarms basically send less resources. And the action taken was, that has been completed, but it is still agency specific, so that some agencies send a little bit more than other agencies depending on their staffing and depending on their target hazards, but it's very agency specific. Recommendation number 3 was on a motor vehicle crash without entrapment. Change the dispatch protocols to only send the appropriate closest unit. The action taken, that is completed, but again, very agency specific, based on staffing, based on operational concerns. Recommendation number 4, if no merger occurs, the larger departments should evaluate the impact of how automatic or mutual aid we provide to the smaller departments for which we receive no remuneration. Action taken, the automatic mutual aid has removed all the boundaries for service. If there's a call for service, we don't worry about whose jurisdiction it's in. We go when we're called. We also rely heavily on the smaller neighboring departments around us to provide us service when our units are either on emergent calls or tied up in training. So we use them just as much as they use us. Our run cards and our training schedule is all built to maintain the best and closest coverage be available at all times. Recommendation number 5, the fire chief should agree to accept and implement a nationally recognized medical priority dispatch system. We are currently in yet another upgrade of our medical dispatch priority system, and it's ongoing with continual upgrades. The deputy director of the Volusia County 911 Center, her name is Claudine Boring. She has really dug in deep, and the staff out there is in the process of building their own priority medical dispatch system, and it's I think there's like 90 different call types. Depending on what you call in for, with what your medical emergency is, there's a like a call tree, and there's 90 different types of calls that can be dispatched. Recommendation number 6, department should determine how to use a combination of static and demand staffing and deployment to justify the need for and cost of resources. The action taken is basically, we couldn't find any other fire departments in the state of Florida that do demand staffing for their strategic deployment. We're a statically deployed service. We have fire stations, we park our members and our apparatus in the fire stations, and that's where we respond from. Dynamic deployment means you basically go where you can predict the next emergency call might be. That might work well for EMS services, but it's simply, based on our research, there's no other services in Florida that provide that for fire service. So we still are a statically deployed department. We have 5 fire stations, as you all know, here in Port Orange, and we send our members on emergency calls when they're in the fire stations. But to follow up on that, Volusia County EMS reached out to me, and they've requested to meet to discuss using 2 of our fire stations as a combination posting locations. I've discussed this with a couple of you briefly. I'm not opposed to the idea on the surface, but I want to make sure what they have to offer will work in our deployment methodology. I really have no interest in having their dynamically deployed crews in and out of our stations at all hours of the day and night, because these are our homes. When we are at the fire station, it becomes our home away from home, literally. Their deployment methodology and our deployment methodology simply wouldn't work if they brought their system into our system. I'm currently not really open to that concept, but I feel like I need to do my due diligence in finding out if there's somewhere in the middle that we can meet. If they're interested in using our fire stations as a static deployed facility, I'm willing to discuss it with them. And they've got new leadership in place. They're very progressive, and so far so good. I've been very open to talking to them about it.
Chief, just to clarify that point, when you're talking about static deployed, as opposed to now where they stay mobilely deployed, if that's the right terminology, they're in the unit, engine running, sitting somewhere in the city. Static would mean they would park at the fire station, they can go inside.
Correct.
Rest, hang out, have
Here's
something to
the
eat.
basic difference. A static deployment methodology, as we do it, we run our calls out of our fire station. We might be at training, we might be returning from a call, we might be at the grocery store. We always respond typically from the fire station.
Right.
A dynamic deployment is based on where they predict the next area the call is, and if that ambulance has to transport a patient to Halifax and Daytona, then they might send a different ambulance to our fire station. That's the difference in a dynamic versus a statically deployed. Our fire trucks always return home to their fire stations. In a dynamic deployment method, we might get 6, 7, 8 different ambulances responding out of our fire station.
In a 12-hour shift.
And they work 12-hour
They're
shifts.
12-hour shift.
Oh.
They don't work the same shifts that we do.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm
Not so sure I like that.
And quite
Yeah.
frankly, I don't either.
Yeah.
But they are willing to discuss it further, and as I said in the radio show I listened to today, you gave Mr. Reckenwald props, and the leadership team at Volusia County EMS, Public Protection, all the way up to County Manager Reckenwald, they're willing to sit and discuss it. So far we've had one meeting. I'm interested to see where it's going to go.
And let me clarify, I'm not opposed to you having those discussions and seeing what opportunities to make EMS overall better for all of our residents. But
Let's remember that's the bottom line.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
got to be a good fit.
Yeah.
On all
How
sides.
does
but-
it help enhance
Exactly.
the service
That's right.
for our
Yeah.
residents?
Agreed.
And that's the question that I was going to have. Go ahead. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Scott.
No, go ahead.
I don't know what they're trying to achieve by, and certainly I'll talk to them about anything that helps our residents. But if you're dynamically deploying from a static location, how's that dynamic deployment anymore? And what is it they're trying to gain by that? I don't understand what it is they get if they're deploying.
I think what it does for them, my own personal opinion, is it gives their workers somewhere to wash their hands after a call. They're typically parked at Wawa, they're parked in a shade tree, they're parked on a street corner. Their working conditions are horrible. Quite frankly, that's my opinion. I wouldn't do it for
Chief,
anything.
if I can just interject, because I know this goes back before your time, they used to have that model. And they had places and they had facilities. We had one right at Oak Street
Yes, we
and
did.
in Spruce Creek Road, where they statically deployed, if you will. That was their home. That was their place. They gave that model up, and because they felt like that model wasn't effective and it didn't work, and there were a whole series of reasons behind all of that. And so I agree with the mayor, is you had that, you gave it up. Are you saying that didn't work and now you just don't have those facilities and resources? And
I think it's a lot of it's with
you
new
know,
leadership, new, more progressive leadership.
Yeah, and I agree with what you're saying. The way they do it now, I just
It is
just cannot
statistically
imagine that
driven.
environment. It's tough on
And
them.
I understand how they're doing. They're statistically, with using statistics to figure out where their call volume
Sure.
comes from, not just when it comes from, so that they know that they need to shift this guy over here and shift that girl a little bit this way when they get a call over here and this one's out. And all that sounds great if you've got enough units on the road.
Yeah.
And I'm still not sure that they do.
Well, and that's a little bit of a smoke and mirrors type thing. When we knew many years ago when they went to that model why they were doing it. The reality is they're spread too thin, and that was some of the issue. Now I get it. It's 2019. We got to move forward and figure out what's best now, but they had that model similarity. And
It's one thing when you're using that
it's
model
tough.
to fill a hole, but when they use that model and it creates a bigger gap.
Yeah,
It-
and I think that's really what happened.
Yeah.
But anyhow, sorry, Chief, I didn't mean to get off on that too long.
I got a question. Are they discussing with other departments?
Yes. I think
And-
they're in discussions with both DeLand and Deltona. I think they've already parked an ambulance at the fire station in Daytona Beach Shores, and it's
Okay.
it's in the evening hours, and I believe it's a statically deployed ambulance that they're using Daytona Beach Shores Fire Station for. When they transport somebody from the shores, they go to the hospital, they go right back to the fire
And
station.
that
And so
might
those other
work in their
cities-
community
yeah.
because they've got a different public safety model and it's a smaller city.
Yeah, and those other cities they're discussing with are not providing transport, are they?
I believe both DeLand no, Deltona yes.
Okay, Deltona does do it, yeah. Okay.
Again, very early in discussions, but, I feel like it's my obligation as a fire chief to do my due diligence. They came to me with the idea.
Absolutely.
I want to sit and talk with them and see if there's
Certainly.
middle ground or
See if you can
there's
make
not.
it work or if it's
Absolutely.
just not possible.
In
Okay.
a perfect world, I would be coming to you and asking for another ambulance or two. But in the meantime, if I have an opportunity to improve the level of service to the community by working with Volusia County
Yeah.
MS, I'm open to that as well.
As long as it doesn't hinder our ability to provide
Agreed.
the service. Perfect.
Recommendation number 7, city should reevaluate their need to provide advanced level life support response. The action that was taken, all cities that offered ALS services in 2010 continue to be ALS services. There's only one department in Volusia County that does not offer fire department based ALS, and that's DeLand.
DeLand, yeah.
And as a side note, Dr. Springer, our county medical director, does not endorse a downgrade of medical response capabilities.
Very good.
Recommendation number 8 was to assign multiple units on an incident on the same TAC channel. We've been doing that for years. That action has been completed. Recommendation 9 was to create a protocol where fire departments whose first respond vehicles with transport capability could transport patients under specific situations. That sentence itself refers to the old contingency transport
Care,
program.
yeah.
We moved from contingency to plus, and now from plus to care, which we're a part of. And so, as you all know, we implemented our care agreement and our care program back on April 15th of this year. And we're one of the 5 municipal transport agencies in Volusia County currently operating under the care agreement, and we were the first one. Yes, sir.
What sort of vehicle would fire department transport if it's not an ambulance?
We used to have
Like,
one.
what would they transport? Like for the example in I think it was Edgewater, Deltona maybe, when the firefighters transported, do they take them in the truck? Or is there another vehicle?
I believe
How would that happen?
I believe the situation you're referring to, which happened many years ago, they transported a patient in Edgewater in their fire department ambulance, but they did not have the appropriate licensure at that time, and it became a large.
Or approval to make that
Yeah.
particular transport.
And so that's
Yeah, because I'm seeing where whose first responder, create a protocol with firefighters whose first responder vehicles have transport capability. Are there other transport capable vehicles
No.
other than an ambulance?
yeah. I see where you're going now.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. The county does have what they call rescue engines, which is a fire truck
That's what I'm asking.
with an ambulance transport box bolted on the back, and they're phasing them out already.
Why?
They don't work.
No.
I saw a couple of those, I think, down in like the Fort Myers, Naples area a couple of years ago, and it looks like it's a hybrid type of thing. It just looks like you're trying to do too much there. It's a vehicle bigger than it needs to be, and in some cases not big enough type of a deal, and it just, I don't know. It definitely
Yeah,
looked
the
a
county
little odd.
does have, I think they have 4 of them deployed. They call them rescue engines. There's one in Oak Hill. There's one, a couple on the west side.
So that was their kind of way of trying to, because this
Yeah.
debate's been going on for quite some time. That was
Now,
their way
when
of trying to figure that out.
when they utilize the one up near Pearson, when they transport a patient up in the Pearson area, it ties that rescue engine up for probably 60 to 90 minutes to go all the way into Halifax and go all the way back to Pearson. So then they have to relocate a different company from a different part of the county all the way out to Pearson. So there's this continual shuffle of resources to try to cover the holes that are created when that rescue engine is transporting a patient.
You don't
Seemed
have
like a
enough
good
fingers
idea
to
at the
cover
time,
holes.
but I think they're already gonna shelve it.
You try things, that's how you learn.
Yeah.
We learn by doing.
Recommendation number 10 was to provide maximum efficiency. The county should merge all 911 resources under one, the Volusia County Sheriff's Office. They did that here, and I would offer to point out that Port Orange and our neighboring cities have realized a reduction in the quality of customer service when the RCC was eliminated in favor of the Volusia County Sheriff's Office. I'm not saying they're doing a bad job. I just think that we had a lot better customer service based operation when we
Yeah, I
had the
think
RCC
this is
right
one,
here.
depends on where you live.
it
If
was
you
a
live in
step.
a city that didn't have an RCC and you're doing your own dispatch, there's an upgrade. If you lived in southeast Volusia where we were already cooperating and had a concerted effort, it was a downgrade for us.
Yeah, definite
Depends on where you
downgrade.
live.
Yep. Recommendations 11 through 17, they did not apply to Port Orange. That was all about relocating stations, adding stations, closing stations, and none of that applied to Port Orange. Recommendations 18 through 23 was a combination of merger ideas, none of which have ever transpired. The current Volusia County Fire Chiefs fire initiatives include, we have standardized response protocols, we have automatic aid agreements, shared assets. We're looking seriously at using our fire impact fees for the Joint Regional Training Center for the Southeast region. We share personnel, we share programs, we have a juvenile fire setter program. Our Fire Marshal Bo Gardner does fire investigations for many of the area cities. The Fire Explorer Post, Orange City became the designated town on that side of the county for a Fire Explorer Post. We have the Eastside Technical Rescue Team. Currently, some of the 2020 efforts on the radar screen, we're working on a centralized EMS supply consortium. Right now, Dr. Springer has 16 DEA licenses with his name on it. Those are for controlled substances that the fire department, the Advanced Life Support Fire Department provides. He would like to get that down to 1. The only way we can do that is to have a centralized repository for controlled substances. So that's one of our biggest efforts that we're going to be working on in 2020. We want to reduce unnecessary mandated medical supplies on non-transport apparatus for no other reason than the shelf life. A lot of the medications, a lot of the equipment we carry on non-transport vehicles doesn't get used as often as a transport vehicle, and we're seeing stuff shelf life and age out, and we're throwing away stuff that never got used. So we're trying to reduce the equipment that we need on non-transport
And
vehicles.
this is not a new problem.
No, it's been
This
going on
is
a long
not
time.
a new problem.
Another thing we're working on is a cooperative purchasing contract for 2020. Some of the other things we've done, measured nursing home responses. We don't send fire department resources anymore to a lot of these care facilities where there are trained medical staff there. If a nursing home or a urgent care calls for an emergency transport, they don't send the fire department anymore. There's no need for us to be there when there's people there that are trained to our level or oftentimes even higher. So the Volusia County Fire Chiefs initiated this the measured nursing home response. As a result of that, I provided our finance director's department some statistics on FY19, and we actually ran about 400 fewer calls in FY19 than we did FY18. So we're seeing the results of some of these initiatives pay off because we're running less and less call volume.
Yeah, some of the ALFs were wearing us out.
Yeah.
The nursing homes were just wearing us out.
ALFs and a lot of the Citizens Assist.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had one citizen in Port Orange we responded to over 100 times in between June and August.
Mm.
So we're trying to better manage that. Enhanced emergency medical dispatch. This is another thing I want to point out to you. The county took the bull by the horns, and they're starting a nurse triage program on December the 9th. They hired a nurse triage coordinator, and they've hired, I think, 8 nurses that will be staffed at the 911 center. And out of those 90 call types, I think there's going to be about 13 of those call types that may eventually route to the nurse triage. The nurse triage will then try to talk to that patient over the phone to try to talk them into, okay, this might be your condition, but do you really need an emergency response for that condition? So they've hired the people, they're writing the program. It's going to launch in early December, and I think it's going to yield even better results as we start to see some of the unnecessary call volume start going down. The Plus was replaced by CARE. CARE was implemented 4/15 for Port Orange. Everybody else, the other 4, followed behind us. The county had started basic life support transport units up in the Holly Hill, Daytona Beach area. Earlier this year, that plan's already been scrapped. They phased those out in favor of using those resources as interfacility transport vehicles. The return to service waiver,
I tell you what, that's a great point, because the interfacility transporting patients from one hospital to another could tie up an ALS unit for hours. And that was a major drain on ambulance resources.
they recognize that, and the leadership out there is addressing it quickly. So, hats off to them. Return to service waiver. Basically, this is being piloted up in Daytona Beach and Holly Hill. It's one of those things where if you're on a non-emergency medical call and there's not an ambulance available, it is a waiver that the firefighters can have the patient sign that says you're not in any medical emergency. Sign this waiver. You can wait here for an ambulance, and we're going back in service, and we're going to wait on another emergency call. It has been piloted up in Daytona Beach and Holly Hill. The medical director is good to let it go countywide. Taxi cab vouchers are another thing. Instead of transporting patients in ambulances, we're going to give them a taxi cab voucher. Again, more specific to Daytona and Holly Hill, less to Port Orange. And again,
Chief, on that one, I heard that they were also considering utilizing Uber and Lyft as well. Are they going to do that, or is it just strictly taxi?
I think it's, as of right now, my understanding is it's taxi cab vouchers.
Okay.
I think Uber and Lyft are pushing back on that concept.
Okay.
Uber's pushing
It's
way back on
successfully,
Yeah.
it's having a favorable response right now. The vouchers are favorable thus far.
As I understand it, but it's specific to Daytona Beach and Holly Hill.
Of course.
Yeah. And then
Favorable.
nurse triage again, it starts December the 9th.
On the taxi cab vouchers and the service waivers, have you looked at any kind of research on liabilities that municipalities and counties are incurring by going to a program like that, and then what kind of impacts there would be?
I personally have not, but I know the county legal department has spent
Okay.
exhaustive amount of hours creating a waiver that they feel comfortable with.
Yeah.
So I can see Matt's anguished look over there on his face.
Well, I
but,
share that with them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's things happen. You know
Yeah.
that, and I know
I-
that.
I-
and
I
it
get
doesn't
that,
take but
but-
one. And man,
The trying to think how to say this. The target demographic that will utilize this most does not reside in Port Orange.
yeah.
Because we don't have those same type of problem and that demographic here that a couple of our other cities in Volusia County have.
And I know one of the cities to the northeast, it might have been NYC, where they were having major issues with Uber, Lyft, and their regular taxi services. People, one of the cases that I think was talked about specifically was a woman in labor who just needed to get to the hospital to give birth, and women were choosing to call Uber as their method of transportation because they could get there quicker. And Uber was like, hang on, this is not what we're here for. And of course, you have an incident, and now there's this liability, and you've got those kind of problems. And so I know in some of those big metropolitan areas, they're going through this right now, and that's where I'm curious what the liabilities are going to be. And
Well, in any area where you have a high percentage of people that don't have their own transportation,
yeah,
when they get sick, they call for an ambulance.
mm-hmm.
That's the way it is.
Sure.
So in closing, I'll answer any questions you may have, but representative of Volusia County Fire Chiefs Association, We feel that this exemplifies a very, very successful functional and operational consolidation as we've done it since the Tri-Data study came out.
And those are the key
We've
words.
addressed the recommendations, we've implemented a lot of changes. My colleagues at the Volusia County Fire Chiefs Association, everybody is working together. A lot of great things have changed since 2010, and a lot of other great things are continuing to happen. So with that, I'll answer any questions.
Chase?
Well, great presentation, Chief.
Thank you.
You know, it's been a discussion for a number of years, obviously, about whether or not, because I don't know what kind of appetite I have for it. I'm very pleased with the service that we provide and your leadership here. I'm curious, though. I did notice page 5 in the final report, Subcommittee of Volusia County Fire Chiefs wrote a report entitled, the report itself, the chief stated full consolidation is most efficient, but has the largest political barriers overcome. So my question, I guess, is, you know, I've heard so many on the opposite sides of the aisle saying, no, we should never do it, it'll be disastrous, but the unanimous, or seems to be the overwhelming majority of chiefs at the time said it would be the most efficient route. Now, it's not my business, so I don't know what would be, and I don't have an opinion one way or another. I'd be cautious of handing over anything from here to the county, you know, given, you know, what we've had to do to compensate on some deficiencies there. I'm curious into the independent fire district, a separate board created to where that's their sole responsibility is fire service and maybe even transport to be a part of that. I'm curious as to your opinion on that.
Well, my opinion is this: what we have right now is not broken. It's working very well. We could look into some of this other stuff, but I think what you highlighted at the first part of your question was the political impact, the political ramifications, because the first thing you're going to have to do is to get everybody to agree to do it.
Sure.
And I think that's going to be very difficult at best. Right now, what the Chiefs Association sees in 2019 is a success based on the Tri-Data recommendations. I don't know that there's an appetite, a 100% appetite politically to go past where we're at right now. Quite frankly, I just don't see it. As a matter of fact, I think I saw recently in writing that the roundtable of elected officials decided to scrap the idea of consolidation.
Mm-hmm.
So it will probably come up again in my life or your life, but as of right now, we're happy with operating things the way we are.
Yeah, and it's not something that I'd be campaigning on or looking to do. But I was just struck at when they say it's the most efficient. So if our goal is to get the most efficient and best quality service, you know, that to me is worth looking at, if indeed that would be the case.
Well, they also overestimated the cost by $74 million.
Perhaps. But these are
There are a lot
fire
of
chiefs,
reasons for that, though.
these are the professionals that say it would be the most efficient.
From 9 years ago,
Yeah. In the
most
middle
of
a
which
re-
are not around anymore.
In the middle of a recession.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, again, this is not something I'm pushing for, I'm just asking these questions, seeing how, if it's dated or outdated, and that's what I wanted to hear from, so.
And again, I think the position of the Volusia County Fire Chiefs is to provide you elected officials the information.
Mhm.
We will take your direction, but my professional and personal belief at this podium right now is things are working pretty good.
And I'd agree with you, you know, if it came up to us right now, unless I had some real solid numbers to prove me otherwise, I'm pleased with what we provide, I wouldn't ask anything different.
I'll
You do a
give
great
you-
job.
I'll give you a little bit of history. And I feel, and I've sat up here 9 years, my first obligation is to the residents of the city of Port Orange, to make sure that we are providing the best service possible at an efficient price.
Mm-hmm.
When you look back at the differences of pay, difference in pension plans, difference of costs, when DeBerry would have been paying in 2010 0.52 mils for their fire department of their millage rate, and Daytona Beach is paying 3.03 mils. there was so many winners and losers in that. Why would DeBerry give that up and want to pay more to give service that the improvements that they could get with a much lower investment of their own? So the disparities in cost were just tremendous. And I was up here in 2010 advocating for this. And what I was advocating for was a consolidation in the southeast region, because these were our partners and we had regional dispatch. They trained together, they worked together, and these are the things that we did back then. It made a lot of sense for us as a region. I didn't want to do it on a county basis, but there was no political appetite from the council at the time to do it. So instead, functionally, we asked our chiefs and our city managers to go back and work harder to try to make the system better. And in many ways, not only have they done it in the southeast region, a lot of these things have been done countywide to get what you're calling a functional consolidation. You get closest response. Your neighbor's house is on fire. Literally, you don't ask what city he's in. You send the closest unit. We help each other. We work together. We do the things that we have to do. But and it went so much more beyond the pride of a Port Orange fire truck pulling up. I want the closest unit coming to my house. I don't care where it's coming from. If my house is on fire, certainly the pride thing is there, but the most important thing is it's like the guy lying on the ground. He wants all the help he can get, and the guy driving by is wondering why there's 10 people there helping him. So it's all a matter of perspective, and there was just really no way, from cost standpoint, from efficiency standpoint, putting all this together at the time made sense from a county on a county basis. And then as soon as county took away dispatch from us regionally here and made it countywide, we lost a lot of the things we could have gained by consolidating with our regional partners. So what we've done is we've gone back and let's see how we can make what we have here even better. And Chief, I appreciate your leadership in the last couple of years. We've really gotten a system that is responsive to what my first responsibility is to the citizens of Port Orange. But I don't forget my neighbors. Daytona Beach Shores answers calls in our city. We answer calls in their city. South Daytona answers calls in our city. We answer calls in theirs. New Smyrna, and the list goes on down the line. And we don't have necessarily keep a chalkboard and keep score. We're looking for the best service model that works well, and how can we work better with our neighbors. And in doing so, we've improved our efficiencies. So that's a little bit of the political background and things have changed since then to now. And I'll sit here and say that I was an advocate for it then on a regional basis. I don't think it would work on a county basis now. I think we've achieved too much. And Chase, you pointed it out. What that we thought we were going to spend on it had everybody was running around at the time with their hair on fire. How are we going to prevent this? How are we going to prevent this? Well, guess what? We prevented it. We rolled up our sleeves, did the hard work, and we achieved a certain number of efficiencies. So that's just my take on the history of it.
I'm going to finish up real quick. I would like to keep a running dialogue on the transports, using the county EMS partnering up with your facility. I'd like to hear your
any
thoughts
future meetings. I'll brief you on.
Yeah.
I kind of the last time I met with them, when they said this is how we would like to do it, I was very frank with them. I said that's a deal killer for me. So I think they're going to go back and discuss it internally with themselves, and if they can even present an idea for a combination static deployment, well, they'll send that same unit back after they deliver a patient to the hospital. I'm not opposed to talking about it, but it's a big change for my members, because these buildings are our homes. We live there 24 hours.
And that was my initial thought right away, and you hit on that, and I can appreciate and certainly respect that.
So I feel like I have to do my due diligence to try to get the citizens of Port Orange the best service we can, but then we have to look at all the side effects when we start mingling county EMS with municipal fire.
What are we giving up, and what's it going to cost us to make those gains, and are those gains significant enough? That's my litmus test.
It's something silly. I mean, if an ambulance guy leaves a dirty cup in in the sink, that's where it all starts.
Well, and Chief,
It sounds
this is one
silly,
of-
but that's where it
and this is
starts.
one of the things that I've always admired about you. You know, we've been on the opposite ends of some discussions in the past, but it doesn't change the fact that you're the absolute right and perfect person for the city of Port Orange. I think you do a hell of a job. And what I love about what you do is in your approach of making sure that we have the highest quality of service for our residents, you're always fighting for your guys and making sure that they're well taken care of as well. So I appreciate that about you, and I want to recognize it.
Like, thank you. I think advocating for your members is the least any chief can do.
Absolutely.
Drew, what do you got?
And then further, because I mean, I was a part of the talks over nearly 26 years, and you know, then you know, they did the study in 2010, and really nothing happened right away, and then kind of slowly chipped away. You know, RCC went away, and some things have made for the positive. But I just have to say, you know, keep doing what you're doing, because it's working well, and we're definitely heading in the right direction for sure, and making positive gains. So, well done.
Appreciate that. And it's the team. It's the staff, it's the
Absolutely.
team, it's the admin assistants we have, it's the emergency manager, it's the entire team.
Yep. Scott?
Good presentation, Chief. I appreciate the update and the reflection to look back and go over that stuff. You know, I think that the key thing for the city of Port Orange and our residents, it's really about relationships. And we've got a great staff now that I think has really improved significantly the relationships with other municipalities, the county staff, and that's really huge, because some of the things that I've seen most effective especially from our first responder core groups, are when we have the relationships, we develop very effective mutual aid agreements and great operational agreements, and that makes it better for everybody. You know, I've made no bones about it. I'm not a fan of consolidation. You know, one of the reasons why there are such things as municipalities is that certain areas can determine their levels of quality service, and what our levels are that we choose that our residents expect may be higher than other municipalities, and that's okay. They can choose theirs as well. And but you know, when we look at the history of things, I think Chase said it a couple weeks ago in an interview when you were talking about, if you don't recognize what's the saying, how's it go? If you don't recognize your history, you're doomed to make the same mistakes, or something along that lines. I'm paraphrasing, but you know, when we look at the history of things, consolidation has rarely ever worked out in our favor. It just hasn't been good for us, and I think a lot of times it's been because we get very used to a different level of service and a higher standard, and I'm okay with that. I'm not embarrassed about that. The least, I want to maintain that. But if other areas have lower level, that's fine. That is okay. People can choose to live in those cities too, and that's fine. But the history of that has not been favorable for us, and I'm kind of proud of that. I mean, I like the fact that we want to provide better for our residents, and we will go to great lengths. And we're not always perfect, and we're not always right, but we're going to try. And when we can try when we have that control. When you give that control up, you may never ever get those chances to try again because you've given it up. And now you end up with, this is just what we have. And that's just not the kind of city that I think we want to be and our residents are looking forward to. But I appreciate the presentation. I appreciate the updates and where we've come. We've come a really long way in terms of the relationship that you've worked hard to establish and foster, and the county vice versa as well, with Mr. Rechtenwald and his staff. Man, that is fabulous news. That is great stuff to hear. I hope that just gets better and better and better for the good of our residents and the residents in all of Volusia County, because that's really where we've needed to go for a really long time. And I get, sometimes it's going to be a couple steps forward and maybe a step back and a few more forward, and I got that. And we'll work through those over the course of time, but there's been a lot of good strides, and the one thing that I'm extremely confident and very proud of is the service and the quality that we can provide our residents through fire and EMS services and transport services in our city now, and so it's good stuff.
The county needed to make a lot of progress on a lot of things, and I'm not one necessarily to critique other governments, But I will say that since the county manager has changed, not perfect, they're still got a lot of things they got to work on. They are no longer entrenched in a this is the way we do it, take it or leave it, my way or the highway type of philosophy. And that was a style of management the last guy had, and that's not the style of management this guy has, so that allows for conversations, real conversations on a lot of different levels. I'll also add that talking to, way back then, one of the authors of the Civic League report was Howard Tipton, one of the smartest guys ever to run a city. And he said to me, when I was talking about it and picking his brain a little bit, he says, if this never gets done, if it starts a conversation that improves things, then I feel like we've accomplished something. I don't need to see this consolidation the way we've recommended it to consider this report successful if it starts the conversation and moves us down the road. And it very much has. And I appreciate him having said that back then. Howard's a smart guy. Chief, quick question. What's our current ISO rating?
3.
And what are the number of funded fire positions we have right now?
63.5.
In
You
2000,
hired half of a firefighter?
Our quartermaster's
in 2010, our ISO rating was 4, with approximately the same staff of 62. So, in moving an ISO rating just 1 point is tremendous. We actually moved from 4 to higher and have come back since then. But that basically says what you can do when you have the right people at the helm, what you can do with the same resources if you think outside the box, work with other individuals, work to constantly improve. And we always, no matter what we do, we cannot stagnate. Not just your department, all our departments. We cannot stagnate. We have to have systems of continuous improvement. We always have to ask ourselves, times are good, but how can we do this better? Because if we don't do that, we stagnate. We have what we had in 2012, 2013. And you can have a lot of good people entrenched and nothing gets done. And we have to have systems of continuous improvement. And I think that we are there and we're traveling that road, and we need to continue to travel that road. Chief, thank you for the presentation.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it. Melissa, are there any other comments?
Nope. Good to go.
That concludes the workshop for this evening. We will meet again in 2 weeks for a city council meeting, first Tuesday of November. Thank you. Have a good night.
Perfect.